Okay, wonderful. So my first question for all of our panelists is, what are the requirements to apply to your specific graduate school program? And could you offer a little more insight to specific GPAs, standardized test scores, et cetera, that your programs might be looking for?
Sure. So for the PA program, we participate in a centralized application process known as CASPA, which is pretty standard. You're going to hear a lot of pause from my colleagues here in the future for the application process. So it is an opportunity for you to put all of your information into one centralized database and then select the different institutions that you want your results shared. For our program, we have a couple of different areas that we look at for admissions. First would be the academic component. And then within the academic component, there are several variables that we look at for our students. We have a minimum overall GPA of 3.0, and then we have a minimum of a 3.2 in science-based GPAs, and students can meet that requirement one of two ways. They can have an overall science GPA of 3.2, or they can have a 3.2 in the last 40 hours of completed science-based courses during their academic journey. And then the third variable would be the professional exam. And for students in our PA program, they can either take the GRE or the MCAT as part of the admissions review process for our students. Second major area, which would be the one area that's going to make PA different than some of my other colleagues that will share some information with you in the future, is we have required documented healthcare hours of work, volunteer or research that need to be completed as part of the admissions process. And so students have to have documented healthcare experience, either through paid or volunteer-based work, or through research experiences working directly with humans, providing some type of healthcare experience. Ours is a minimum of 1,000 hours at the time the student submits the application. We will calculate those hours through December 31st of that admission cycle. For applicants to meet that requirement. After that, there are 3 letters of recommendation. One of those letters of recommendation must come from a collegiate academic professor. One must come from a supervisor that provided some type of evaluation to the applicant during one or any of their healthcare experiences. And then the third can come from anyone that the student wants to submit, but 3 minimum. 2 of the 3 are very specific in one of those. And then there would be the personal statement that the candidate must fill out as part of our application process. We do not have a standard question. The personal statement can talk to us about anything that you want. Some schools may have a focused personal statement, but we do not. It's any information that the applicant wants to share with us through the process. So those are the specific requirements that we require as part of our application process.
For the MD side of things, it's fairly similar to the PA program. We have a centralized application service that is called AMCAS. So applicants will fill out a variety of information through the AMCAS system and then choose to send it to the medical schools that they are interested in applying to. Upon us receiving their AMCAS application, we can choose to send applicants what we call a secondary application. And for medical schools, the secondary application can be unique to that school, so they might not all ask the same questions. For us, it's typically like 2 or 3 short answer questions, and then just looking to dive a little bit further into your medically related experiences. And then after your secondary application is completed and we've got all of your information, that's when we consider you for interview. But the primary components that we're looking for are similar to the PA program in that we look at academics. So we look at both GPA and the MCAT score. We do have minimums in place for both of those that we need applicants to meet to be able to send you a secondary application. So They can change year per year, but this year we need you to have a 3.0 cumulative GPA and science GPA and at least a 500 on the MCAT with a 123 or above in each section. And upon meeting those, we can then send you a secondary application. But as far as the academics component outside of that, we do look at your experiences. We do not have a minimum number of clinical or healthcare hours that we're looking for, but we do want you to have spent time in front of the professional that you're trying to become and in front of patients and generally in the environment to help you know that this is the way that you want to help people in the world. So looking for those healthcare related experiences, volunteering, research, if you have any leadership or teaching or teamwork experience, kind of being well-rounded in all of these things can really help you to be a great doctor. We also look at letters of recommendation, typically from 2 individuals in the academic setting and then 1 to 2 in the non-academic setting, and do also have a personal statement as part of the AMCAS application. So that basically just asks you to explain why are you interested in a career in medicine, and really drawing upon your experiences and what you've learned and what you've witnessed to help you know that this is what you want to do. So the committee takes a look at everything and also your own pieces of writing, which are really a chance for you to share your voice with the admissions committee too, through your secondary answers, your personal statement, and then your letters, which are what other people write on your behalf. So all of this comes into play in the MD process.
So for public health, we are a part of the graduate school. So some of my answers are generic to graduate programs at Iowa, and then some are very specific to the College of Public Health at Iowa. So we have a few graduate degrees to choose from, including a Master of Science in all 5 of our disciplines, which are epidemiology, biostatistics, occupational environmental health, community behavioral health, and health management and policy. And we also offer PhD degrees in those areas as well. We have a Master of Science in Industrial Hygiene. And then we also offer 2 professional degrees in the Master of Public Health degree and the Master of Health Administration. Those are both 2-year programs that really lead into more of the applied public health side. So the Master of Public Health, you can obtain in any of those 5 areas that I just rattled off, as well as combining them with a lot of the programs that you're going to hear from today. That's a very popular option for people to go and get their medical degree and their Master of Public Health, or their pharmacy degree and their Master of Public Health, because public health works really well with others. The other professional degree that we offer is a Master of Health Administration. So that's for your hospital administrators. If you're looking to be in an administrative role in hospitals, nursing homes, insurance companies, et cetera, that Master of Health Administration degree might be something of interest to you. Additionally, we offer a really cool program in our undergrad to grad world. So that 4-1 programming that the University of Iowa offers, we have a undergrad to grad option with all of our Master of Public Health degrees and also some of our Master of Science degrees. So if you're looking to obtain that graduate degree and you're moving through undergrad quite nicely, think about cutting off a year of grad school. It's kind of a cool thing, especially if you're thinking about going on into one of our 4-year programs here, like a medical degree or something, where you can come through, get your undergrad grad degree in 5 years, and then another 4 years for medicine. So there's a really cool undergrad to grad option. I'm the contact for all of that, or I can be the triage person for all of that. So if you're ready to start talking about that, I'd be your go-to. The requirements vary by program that I just listed off, right? So I'm going to speak very generally about what items are required for all of those areas. And then you would have to dig deep, not deep, you'd have to take a deeper dive into specific application requirements for each program. So generally speaking, we do use a centralized application service as well. Ours is called SOPHAS, SOPHAS. All of this is on our website too, so don't think you have to remember all of this. We require 3 letters of recommendation. We do not put a requirement on who those letters have to come from, though I will tell you academic letters go a long way. So you're going to want at least 1 to 2 academic, depending on where you're at in your when you apply to public health. So 3 letters of recommendation. You will also need to upload your transcripts. You will need a personal statement. We do put a lot of emphasis on personal statements. The only program that interviews for the College of Public Health is our MHA program. So your personal statement ends up being really our glimpse into you. You'll upload a resume, and then we no longer, I'm very happy to say, require a standardized test. So while before we required a GRE, or we would accept MCAT, PCAT, et cetera, we no longer require a standardized test, and that's for across our graduate programs. So that is a general overview. Can't wait to answer questions.
Awesome. I think I'm next in the rotation, but for College of Pharmacy, we look a little different. So we do not require a bachelor's upon admission or healthcare experience. Pharmacy can be a little misunderstood in the community, so we definitely take that approach in our curriculum to be a little bit more hands-on and to give you those experiences all throughout the curriculum, but definitely in the first year and in that last year especially. We also use kind of a centralized application system called FarmCAS. I always kind of compare it to the Common App. If you know what that is, you're filling out one application, then you can send it to multiple different schools. For pharmacy schools, some might send you some supplemental questions. I think Iowa sends 3, but they're not necessarily like pharmacy knowledge based. They're more getting to know you as a person as we move through that admission process. And then for that, usually we're taking a 2.5, but if you're sitting at a 2.5, we usually want to see a PCAT, but it is not required. If you're sitting at a 3.0, you don't have to. So really, if that gets a little confusing, I'm always here to talk through that. But if you're sitting at a 3.0 math and science, you're good to go. Anything a little bit lower, you probably just want to connect and ask if a PCAT's necessary for you. Really, we're just trying to see math and science scores. For your FarmCAS application, you are going to start filling that out about a year before you want to be in the pharmacy program. Everyone starts in the fall, and everyone starts as a first year in our program just to kind of build that community and move through with your cohort. But for your application, you'll need a personal statement, of course. That's kind of the regular here. And then you'll also need to fill out a transcript. So I always say, like, get your transcripts, get a coffee, sit down and fill that stuff out. It can kind of be like a long process. It can be a little confusing. So if you have questions, once again, me and Liz Davis, she's the director of admissions, are always available to help fill those things out. But you need to put any and every college credit you've ever had. So if you took maybe like a dual credit in high school, or if you received AP credits, we have to add that to the transcript, even if it wasn't at Iowa. And then you also need 2 letters of reference, but we'll take up to 5. Just kind of rule of thumb usually is we want to see someone who can speak to you as a professional. So if you have a manager, we want to see that. And then usually someone who can speak to you as a student. We will take recommendation letters from a TA, just because we do also understand Iowa relies on their TAs a lot. So we'll take a TA or a faculty member. And then after that process, you'll go through a verification process. And then at that point in time, if successful, we can offer an interview. So you'll come interview with our program, and then we'll be able to get you an admission decision about 2 to 3 weeks after that. So kind of nice process there. But that's about it for pharmacy.
All right. So again, I'm Rachel. I'm over at the College of Dentistry, and a lot of similarities. There's a centralized application for the applying to dentistry. If you're a traditional college student doing 4 years, most people apply the June after their junior year of college. Every year, the dental application opens in June. Iowa's deadline, this year it's September 15th. So timing is super important when it comes to the application process for dentistry. But the criteria you need to be aware of, you're going to fill out it's called AADSAS is the name of the centralized application service, AADSAS. And I always joke and say, these people are not marketers, they're dentists that are coming up with these acronyms, right? Like AADSAS is kind of a mouthful. It's not a pretty acronym, but AADSAS, you're going to fill that out. You're going to have taken the DAT, the admissions test, and then you're going to have a minimum of 3 letters of evaluation. We don't depict who authors them as long as it's not a relative. I'm sure your grandma has wonderful things to say about you, but we need an unbiased source. So it can be whoever you want. And then you're going to submit your transcripts as well. And within the application, like everybody else has said, there's a personal statement you're going to fill out. We have a couple of institutional-based questions that are all packaged in there. It's nice, neat, and tidy. And the earlier you apply, the earlier you hear from our admissions committee. So it's more incentive to be on the front end. I included a link. I hit enter a little bit early. Sorry, I hope I didn't disrupt from Lexi's, what Lexi was saying, but I put the dentistry prereq link in there to the chat if anybody wants to dig into that and check it out. And I'm also just going to put a plug. If you have more questions after today and want to talk, I have an application and admissions webinar that's posted on our website, and I also have phone consultations available. And I'm just going to right now put the link for those phone consults and the webinars on the same page too, if anyone wants to do some follow-up. And I'll close that out for now and turn it over to nursing.
Hi, I'm Anita Corey, like I said earlier, and I'm in the College of Nursing, and I'm going to be definitely one of these folks is not like the other. Because I was specifically asked to talk about our Bachelor of Science in Nursing program that current college students could apply to be part of in standard admission. That said, I'm going to put in the chat when I'm done talking, because I can't do both at the same time, how to connect with our admissions, my admissions colleague that recruits for our MSN Entry into Practice program, which is a great program for folks that almost have their bachelor's degree finished and are, thinking about what's next. And so that might be a good graduate program option. But I'm going to talk about the BSN. So if you want to be a nurse, you're like, oh, I hadn't even thought about this. I want to be a nurse. Students that apply for our Bachelor of Science in Nursing program that are already here, so current college students apply each year by April 1st. They've completed, 4 semesters at least of prerequisites, natural sciences, social sciences, all their gen eds, all those things. And I'm going to put the link in the chat right to our website that lists those. There's just too many to list, as you can imagine, 2 years worth of college prereqs to list. Some of those prereqs are pretty unique to nursing. They aren't offered on other campuses. So that's something to pay attention to. And if you think you might want to apply into this program, we're happy to do a transcript evaluation, or you can do a what if degree audit to kind of see what nursing prereqs would you be missing. We'll need to know dual enrollment credit, AP credit, all those things. As my colleague Brooke, I think you're the one that said that. So we look at that as well. You may have done some things in high school that would count as part of your bachelor's degree. So we want to know that. We have an application to apply for standard admission in the College of Nursing. And in that application, we're going to look at your transcripts, of course. We're going to want to know your GPA. We're going to be looking for at least a 3.0 or above. The higher, the better. Our typical admit for this program has about a 3.6. So that's just kind of the range of the folks that do get admitted. However, the GPA isn't really the thing, right? Sometimes that's the reputation that it's all grades, and that really isn't the case. We also ask about activities and leadership experiences, work and volunteer experiences through essays. We're going to ask you about those things through essays, and then we're going to also ask you essay questions. So we don't accept a resume. We don't ask for rec letters. You get the opportunity to convey to us why you're a good fit for nursing through telling us about your activities, your leadership, all those things, and then answering those questions. We do a holistic review. So those essay questions are really important. That's how we get to know you. We don't do interviews, so we won't get to know you that way. So that those essay questions are your way to tell us about yourself and why you'd be a great nurse someday. We review those in June, and then admission decisions are made in July. and then students start the following January. So those students, and in the fall, we're maybe finishing up prereqs, studying abroad. There's lots of options of what you're doing in that fall. That'd be fall of most people's junior year or kind of a third year in college. And so there's things that need to be done that semester, and depending on the applicant, then we help them in that process. When I'm not recruiting students, I'm academic advising students. So we help, we recruited you and admitted you. We're going to also help you figure out what classes you're still missing to be ready for January start. Yeah, I think I'll stop there, and I'll put those links in the chat that I mentioned.
Okay, I'll be asking the second question, and that is, what makes a resume or personal statement stand out? Or what are you looking for in a personal statement / resume?
I would say it varies. I know, one advice I always give the students that I work with and answer questions is when you are finished with your personal statement, you have reviewed it, you have read it, you have other people reviewed it, you've read it to yourself out loud. If you ask yourself, am I the only individual that can write about this topic? If the answer is yes, then it truly is a personal statement, and it's not something that's going to be general that anybody could tell us about when they go through the process. And so, the use of personal experiences, the use of, altruistic reasons as to why, you're presenting the information is something that's definitely important in a piece of advice that I always, tell students when they go through their personal statement. In terms of a resume, for most of the program or processes, it's not an actual resume that you're presenting. You're giving us a lot of information about what you're doing. And so I always work with individuals to make sure that they understand the why of the things that you're doing and the things that you're presenting through that process. So why are you choosing to work in a particular area if you're doing work? Why are you volunteering? Why are you doing research? Why are you involved in this certain student organization over another? Why are you taking a leadership position? Sort of the why, and then maybe what you have learned about yourself through those experiences. And so, writing down, maybe not daily, but, a couple of times, maybe once a week or maybe 2 or 3 times a month, writing down, experiences that you've had in those student clubs and organizations during those work experiences, doing research, doing volunteering, and sort of what you're continuing to learn about yourself. And sort of that growth mindset concept that you're continuing to try to improve yourself, and maybe what those experiences are going to help, or how those experiences are going to help you be a good PA or a physician or a dentist, or working in the area of public health. And so that sort of application and connectedness piece is very important. And so if you have an opportunity to do those in descriptions as part of the application process is important. And then those types of things are going to be very important if you get selected for an interview, because that's the content that we're hopefully going to be able to hear from you as you go through the process. So those are just some minor pieces of advice for those 2 aspects from my perspective.
I totally second every single thing you said, Tom, especially the journaling piece. As much, as you can write down and reflect upon what you've done as you go, it makes it a heck of a lot easier when it comes time to sit down and fill out your application or sit down and write your personal statement, when you've done a lot of that legwork in advance and you've been really proactively reflective about the things that you've done. Other things I'd add to this, in terms of our committee in particular, it doesn't go as far with them when we have applicants begin their personal statement saying, oh, I've wanted to be a doctor since the beginning of time, right? Or since I was 5 years old. We really want to know the things that you've done, but again, just drawing on specific, more recent examples that you've experienced, whether it was a job shadow that you did, where you followed an MD, or a position that you worked, or a clinic you volunteered in, that really helped you to know why this is the way that you want to help people in the world. At the end of the day, and at the end of your personal statement, you really want to have a clear and concise answer to the question of why medicine, or why whatever program you're pursuing. Have reviewers proofread it. It doesn't, look great when you have, sentence structure errors or typos. You want to be as polished as possible for these individuals who are reviewing your application. Make it easy on them. Have your writing be clear and concise and reviewed. Work on the structure of your personal statement too. So depending on how that particular program likes their personal statement submitted, is important for us. We like to see, multiple small paragraphs that are organized and kind of help walk through your journey to pursuing an application at that point. So work on your structure and your organization, and really just creating a clear and concise vision and reasoning for why this is what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of the same. We're all going to have a very similar answer to this question. What I can tell you for public health specifically, though, is we are one of the programs that do ask you to answer different questions. And so a lot of it comes back to those whys, why public health, why this particular area, why. And really, you're demonstrating fit, right? You're demonstrating fit to the admissions committee. And that's true of whatever program you're applying to. You want to show that you're a good fit for that program, and answering the whys is what shows that you're a good fit. And so how are you able to answer those questions? It's really by getting some experience and some knowledge, and doing some research, and talking to people, and job shadowing, wherever. It's all of those experiences and your own personal history, obviously. But all of those experiences are what you draw from when you're writing a, really compelling personal statement, or statement of purpose, or whatever they're calling it. And then likewise on your resume, you really want to show things that highlight that you have some experience in whatever area you're applying to. So for example, if you're applying specifically to our College of Public Health, and specifically to our epidemiology degree, we're not gonna, the fact that you shadowed a physician all the time, that doesn't mean as much in the public health world, right? That's cool. And that's going to give you some really cool experiences. It's going to give you some leadership characteristics. It's going to, really help soft skills and all of that, which is important. But we also want to see that you have a little bit of knowledge within the area that you're applying to. So when you're thinking about it, it all kind of goes together, right? Like you have to figure out the whys, the fit, the what can you do to talk about, to build something to talk about on both your personal statement, and then also fill in your resume, and then you have a better resume and cover letter.
Yeah, once again, I agree with everything everyone has said. If I could repeat it, I would, just so it sticks in your brain. I do think when writing a personal statement, it's important to remember that you're communicating your story to people. So remembering kind of the things that you've been through to get you where you are today. Maybe there has been a really rough patch. I mean, we all just went through COVID, kind of just explaining your story and how you're passionate enough and resilient enough and confident enough in your skills to be worthy of being in that program, and why they should take you. I think it's also important to remember that it's important to be confident when working through these things, just because it can feel really nerve-wracking and scary. But when you show that you're confident and you can move through different problems in life and still push through just fine, I think that shows a lot at the end of the day too, of I'm here now and I'm going to show you why I deserve to be here. And just remembering that it's your voice in that personal statement, essay, whatever they're calling it, just because that's a lot of times the only place that they're getting to know your personality, in opposition to your grades and the things that you're involved in. That's where we can really hear your voice. And I think that's just a really important factor.
Ditto everything that's been said. I think the initial question was about like your resume / personal statement. And, things, of course, we love to see that you're involved in dentistry or that you've explored other health options, but it's those things that are outside of dentistry that makes our admissions committee oftentimes stop and say, oh my goodness, remember that candidate. So for instance, I've been using this as an example this year. We happen to have a candidate this year who was recently in the World Guacamole Championships. And I share that with you because we don't see that every year, right? Like that's so random and awesome. And you don't have to be a world championship, whatever, guacamole or salsa creator, but it's things like that that make you memorable and stand out when you show your personality, when you talk about how you're on the water ski team or, whatever other passions you have outside of healthcare. And that, in my opinion, is what is going to keep patients coming back to you down the line. They probably are never going to ask you what your GPA was or your class rank. They're not going to care. They're going to see you have a diploma on the wall. You are a certified, whatever, doctor, dentist, nurse, and they're going to come back to you because you show up at their kid's football game on Friday night at the high school football stadium, or because they see you, whatever, at the farmer's market downtown and they're able to chit chat with you there. It's those personal things that are going to make you connect with your patients. And so we want to see that in the flesh now. We want to know what makes you tick and what you love. So we appreciate the well-rounded attributes that you include on your application.
I think all of my colleagues here have just, wow, knocked it out of the park. It's all, I would say the same for our nursing program applications, whether that be at the bachelor's level or graduate level. I say to students and families when they come and ask about this, whether we want to get to know you. And so again, those essay questions are your opportunity to tell us what's unique, different, what stands out about you. And to your example, Rachel, I love that. I usually say to students, whether you're making sandwiches at Subway or caring for seniors, how does that help you be a better nurse? Just tell us what you've been doing. And is that because you've learned empathy and patience and service and whatever? I mean, whatever it is you're learning and gaining from that experience, how is that going to make you a better nurse? Because we are looking for, this is a caring, helping profession. So we are looking for caring, helping people to be nurses. And so everything all my colleagues said about editing and reading out loud and getting your friends and a professor to read over your essays, but also just kind of, this is your opportunity to tell us who you are and why you should be a nurse.
Thank you all so much to our panelists for answering those few questions. Our next question is a bit of a pointed one, but hopefully helpful for all of our members. What is a mistake that you see people put within their application, common or uncommon, that you could warn us away from doing within our own application cycles?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think it's going to vary specifically, but particularly for our program, the single most common missed variable is not getting the correct letters of recommendation. We're very specific, academic, healthcare supervisor, third can be from anyone. And we have so many individuals that think that somebody that they're submitting classifies as one of those, and unfortunately based on our guidelines and standards, they don't. So it's probably the most common for us. I think Rachel mentioned it, or MD Rachel, not dentistry Rachel, mentioned it earlier. Mistakes in the personal statement, grammatical errors, those can easily be picked out as well. I think those are some, common mistakes from the application process per se for our program. At this point, I don't know if my colleagues have any other advice or situations.
I'll just echo the letters of recommendation part of it by saying it's really obvious when a recommender doesn't know you super well. So you want to try to choose individuals who you have had meaningful and recent interactions with, who know that you want to go into whatever career path that you want to go into, and can really speak on their interactions with you and why they are confident that you would be an excellent practitioner in whatever realm. And sometimes it's helpful if you haven't been in super close contact, if they were a professor from a couple semesters ago, setting up a meeting with them and refreshing them on your life and what you've been up to and why you want to be a doctor or whatever. Because not only does that really help to ensure that hopefully you're getting a detailed and well-written letter of recommendation, but it makes the job of your recommender a heck of a lot easier too. When they are refreshed and they are current with you, that allows them to then add that positive detail into your letter. The second thing I'll add is, we often tell applicants that anytime throughout the application process where you have the opportunity to actually write or fill out a text box is a chance for you to share your voice directly with our admissions committee, because they never get to meet you in person and they're not the people who conduct interviews with you either. So utilize those spaces to fill out your activities. For the MD process, you can list up to 15 experiences. And while you don't have to fill every single one of them, you want to fill most of them because, again, that's a chance to help the committee get to know you and how you've spent your time. And to dentistry, Rachel's point, even if you have a hobby or, like Anita said, employment, those things matter. So use those spaces to share your voice, because it really does help the committee get to know you. And when we see an applicant that has only filled out a few of those activities, it leaves the committee with a lot of blanks, and you just don't want to leave them with any moments of pause or any unanswered questions.
Yeah, all of that is true. And for public health as well. And I'll just add one other simple thing, and that's we see the mistake quite often that applicants don't give themselves enough time to get letters of recommendation, get their recommenders. First of all, they don't give them enough time to submit a letter. They spring it on them too late, and then they're panicked. They don't give themselves enough time to fill out the application or to write a compelling personal statement. So I would say when we do student panels, and there's always that question, what's your piece of advice, from student to student? And it's always start early on your application. Start early and give yourself a lot of time, and give those recommenders plenty of time to submit a letter as well. We always say we're in public health, ask for the letter at least a month prior to when it's due. And that's even, pushing it for some faculty members. So time.
Once again, all great things. Sorry, I could not push the mute button. Anyways, those, are all great. A lot of times in pharmacy, we do see some issues with like transcript, because we do have like a 2-year program where you only have to do those prerequisites. Sometimes they're like misconstrued or confusing. If something like that is happening, I'm always welcome to do an audit review for you, just to kind of let you know where you're at in pharmacy prereqs. Sometimes we'll take other things, but once again, that's just like a personal conversation that we can have. In the application itself, though, you do have to fill them out, the course name and number, by hand. So that can be a little bit confusing sometimes too. So we see a little bit of mistake there. Of course, we're able to kind of chat with people about what that looks like, just because our requirements are a little different. And different than Lexi, we have a lot of people who are holding on to their application just like a little bit too long. So that personal essay, like just a little too worried that it's not perfect yet. So I would just say something that's important too is like sometimes you just gotta like go for it and say, I've put in enough work, I've put in enough time, I'm just gonna click submit, and that's that. We do have a lot of people who they'll hold on to that application for about a year. And so we just kind of try to instill that confidence of you're gonna be okay. Just submit it, you'll be all right.
I don't know if this is applicable to everybody, all of the colleges present, but my hunch is dentistry is not the only one. On our centralized application service, you indicate how many hours a week you've devoted to your clubs or your employment. You indicate how many credit hours you've taken. And we have seen our admissions committee, their ears have really perked up recently, because I hope it is an honest mistake and not dishonesty, but we have seen applicants whose math doesn't add up, where our admissions committee are adding up their jobs, their clubs per week. And oh my goodness, there's no time for these poor candidates to sleep. And it makes the admissions committee think, what's off? If they can't do their math on their application right, what other issues are we going to encounter? You know, details are really important. And on AdSAS, as others have indicated, there's not a spell check. So do your things in a Word document first, or a Google Doc, or whatever you're comfortable with, type it up there, and then just copy and paste it over into the application and check your math. And we have seen people say, oh, I shadowed 100 hours with a dentist, and that dentist writes a letter of evaluation and they say somebody shadowed 10 hours, not 100. When we've got 800 other applications that are, picture perfect, that makes it easy for our admissions committee to say, something didn't line up here. We're just going to review other candidates instead. So the devil's in the details. Be very thorough and be very honest.
That's perfect, because I was going to say something similar, and that the one mistake we see is candidates just not really answering the question. Sometimes you think you have, but if we're asking, tell us about a time that you had an ethical dilemma and how you handled it, and then you kind of tell us about the time, but you don't really tell us about how you handled it, then that's, I'd say, cool story, right? But like, you didn't tell us, right? So that's what we see, is that our essays are only 1,500 characters, so they're short. And sometimes we're not good at short, right? So just be very mindful. And I think reading out loud, or having a friend, or I call it the critical friend, like the friend that's always like, I don't even know what you mean by that. That friend is who needs to read your essays, not your friend that tells you you're amazing all the time. Your friend that will give you feedback is who should read it, or a professor, or someone at the writing center, or whatever. But yeah, be sure to answer the question.
Okay. So now that everyone kind of finished off with the second question, I wanted to open up the floor for our regular members to ask any questions. Maybe just have need some clarification or some additional questions that we had not asked. So you're free to unmute and ask any of our panelists questions.
Hi. Yeah, I had a question about something. Yeah, so I actually had a question for the medical school about clinical experience. So I guess my question is, after you've done some clinical experience, if that be to volunteering or doing a medical job, what should you write or think about when you journal about these experiences?
That's a really great question. I think it's about, I'm actually going to look for some verbiage that I have used in some individual appointments that we do with applicants, but which I can throw in the chat when I do find it. But in summary, you want to think about what were some meaningful interactions that you witnessed, whether it was something, that the physician did to display compassion or understanding or empathy or sympathy for their patients, ways that they were a leader, things that you witnessed, especially kind of in the shadowing setting. But when you are working in the healthcare setting, whether you are volunteering or working as a CNA or anything like that, thinking about your own interactions with patients and thinking kind of intrinsically, how did working with this person or helping them in a certain way, how did that make me feel? Was that rewarding to me? Was that meaningful to me? How did I make a difference in this person's life? Kind of taking stock of how you are responding to a lot of the experiences that you're having is a way to think about it. or things that you would really like to see yourself doing in the future that other people or the people that you're aspiring to be are doing. That's kind of a good way to think about that. Anyone else have any opinions on how to kind of reflect upon your experiences just in general that might be helpful?
You summed it up quite nicely, Rachel.
Thank you. I'll put this in the chat.
I'm sorry, I hope you can't hear the music that's blaring outside of my house right now, but who else has questions that our panelists here can answer?
I thought there was a pretty good one in the pre-questions that we maybe didn't touch on, that maybe some of us can provide some insight, and that's just tips on interviewing. We've talked a lot about the application process, but not interviewing. And this is something that has sort of come up the last couple of years, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we all know that you individuals are very organized. Most of you are very on the ball, but when it comes to interviewing, particularly for our program, we have done face-to-face interviewing. And usually I would never say this, but sometimes being way early can be a lot of times we're setting up things, we're getting things, and when candidates are showing up 45, 50 minutes early to a scheduled interview, can sometimes be, obviously we want you to plan, we don't want you to be late, we don't want you to miss it, but we want you to err on the other side of things. And for some reason, we have conducted 2 rounds of interviews thus far, and wow, people are showing up like an hour early to interviews, ready to check in. And so it again, it's not a deterrent. We would never discount or not select anybody for that, but it can add a little bit of stress. And then the second thing is remember, every individual that you are interacting with may have some part in the selection process. Whether you think these individuals do or not, they may not be on the admissions committee, they may not be serving as an interviewer, they just may be there to check you in, but those individuals are able to provide feedback, able to provide their suggestions. And so again, none of you are going to be in this category, but we would encourage you to treat every individual involved in the process with respect as you go through, because you never know who that individual is or how that individual may be involved.
It looks like Ari might have a specific question, or if you want to throw that in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself, whatever works for you.
Yeah, so I had a question for Rachel for the pre-dentistry admissions. So regarding sorry, I muted myself again. Regarding volunteering, like, I guess, would it be more like, I don't know, like what the correct word to use, but pretty much like, would you prefer applicants to have like volunteering in multiple places and like less of an overall total, or like have like one place that they're like more dedicated to, and then additionally like with that, like do you look for people who volunteer specifically like in healthcare, or can it be for any like volunteer opportunity?
Yeah, so for dentistry, our volunteerism, involvements, and shadowing, our admissions committee likes to see depth and breadth. So they like to see variety. And so just for example, with shadowing, we think you're going to pick up different skill sets and observations from different dentists that you practice, right? From somebody, you're going to say, wow, I love how they manage their staff. And from somebody else, you're going to say, oh my goodness, I so respect their clinical approach. And somebody else, you're going to have, and so it's great to have more than just, a sprinkle of hours all across the board. When you find somebody that you really respect, hunker in with them, devote some more time to them. But I I have not seen our admissions committee ever deny somebody for having lots of different experiences. But I think the goal is find somebody, cast your net wide, and then find somebody that you really respect and want to emulate, and make that your mentor. Make that somebody that you hopefully have a relationship with that you can spend additional time with. Same for org, same for volunteerism. Great question, Ari.
Wonderful. We're just about towards the end of our hour, and I want to make sure we get our panelists out of here on time, as well as you all. But does anybody have a last minute question before we end for the evening? Christian, I see you have one. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one last minute question because I heard something about interviewing. So I guess it's about like medical school again, but like how does the medical school interview like relate to components found in the personal statement and the secondary application? And I guess how is it different? So I guess this is more about the question of like, how does the medical school interview work, I guess?
Yeah, I'll provide a really quick summary of this. So what's unique about us is that the individuals who interview candidates are not on our admissions committee, and this can vary per school. So when you go into your interviewers don't know a single thing about you. So that is your chance to kind of highlight everything that you said in your personal statement. It's kind of a fresh slate to bring your application to light, in a sense, and to share things that have been impactful to you, because very likely at some point on your interview day, you will be asked, why are you interested in medicine? Why do you want to be a doctor? Something along those lines. And so really having a few concrete examples tucked away in your back pocket that you can then share with your interviewers is kind of a good strategy to take with that. As part of our interview day, you'll have a 25-minute individual interview where it is 2 interviewers and yourself. And that is where they will ask you some structured questions, why medicine, some other things, and then it will open to more of an unstructured portion where they can ask you more about your activities, and you can also ask them questions about their career as well. That's just one portion of it, but I think the most unique thing to take away from this is that they are blind to your application. So that is really your chance to summarize your activities and your interest in medicine to these individuals, which is then reflected in your communication skills, the way that you were able to provide depth and reflection in your responses. That comes across in interview scores.
Wonderful. Before we finish off for the night, I just wanted to give a really big thank you once again to all of our panelists who are here today. As I've mentioned before, I understand this is a very, very busy time for all admissions officers. And so we very much appreciate your time being here today and sharing all of this insight with our members. Yes, thank you so much. We have so much gratitude. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else I have to share with the members for the night. So thank you all so much again for coming, and a special thanks to our panelists for being here today. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.